Welcome to the new channel, guys. It's called Guns Cameras America. Yes, GCA, Guns Cameras America. Today we're going to be looking at the older Blackmagic Production 4K camera. That's right, it's this big, giant 4K cinema camera. Now, we are going into the year 2020, so we want to see whether we should upgrade this for one of the newer Blackmagic Pocket Cinemas, or if we should keep this giant chunk of aluminum. So how about we take a look on the inside and see what the main differences are, and whether you should pick one of these up or one of the newer ones. So as we take a look at these cameras, this is the Blackmagic Production Cinema Camera 4K. The camera came out, I believe, around 2013, 2014. It is a Super 35 sensor that is built in. And these do take the Canon EF mount lenses. This is not a Micro Four Thirds sensor. The Pocket Cinema 4K is a Micro Four Thirds sensor in the new Pocket Cinema 6K, which came out in August of 2019, which was this year. That is the same sensor inside this one, which is Super 35. Taking a look here, this is around 3.8 pounds without the lens, without whatever lens you put on it. So the main body itself is around 3.75, 3.8 pounds. On the back, you do have a very large touch screen running the original Blackmagic design OS. With the latest firmware updates, this Blackmagic camera can do Cinema DNG RAW, which is 4096 pixels wide. The standard 4K is 3840. This also does ProRes HQ, ProRes 422, ProRes Lite, and I believe ProRes Proxy. Those take it down to the 3840 4K format. Looking at this would still be a Netflix approved camera because it does shoot Cinema DNG RAW. If you shoot it at RAW at 24 FPS, you will fall within the category of being Netflix approved. They don't exactly look for the model numbers. They do check to make sure you can do time code, and these are for like Netflix originals. If you're shooting a Netflix original, you're likely not going to be using these. These are older. These are technically outdated according to them. They're not physically supported by Blackmagic Design any longer. So you're likely going to be shooting on a Red or even an RE if you're shooting a Netflix original, which I sure hope you have the budget for one of those cameras if you do have a Netflix original show already being produced. I'm going to go over this further in depth, but this does allow for playback, so you can watch the playback of videos that you do take on the SSD. This takes a full-size SSD, and this is the only way without going through SDI or HDMI to a external film monitor recorder. So it takes a full SSD. You do have your standard 1/4 inch mount at the bottom here. So this takes a 1/4 inch mount, and then this little hole is just for the tripod support mount found on some tripod heads. And at the top you do have 3 1/4 inch mounts, so you can either add attachments or you can even put this in a cage and then have your attachments on top. So this is to give it some support. And I don't know why it's this way, but they do actually have a strap mount to where you could actually put a strap around your neck for this. On the right hand side, or technically this would be stage left, so left hand side, you have the Land C remote at the very top. You have a headphone jack, you have two audio inputs, and these are stereo jacks. These are not 3.5 millimeter. These are full quarter-inch stereo mounts. The downfall that this has is it does do SDI only. It does not offer HDMI. Now, if you're in a professional environment, broadcast environment, you do prefer to have SDI because you can run it thousands of feet before needing a booster, whereas HDMI you can get 50 to 100 feet and then you'll need another booster. But this offers 12G SDI, which is full 4K through SDI output. You can also do 1080. I can't afford the 4K one, considering the SDI to HDMI adapters for 1080 is like $35, and the 4K is like $400. I opted to go with the 1080 for the film monitor I have. And then you also have Thunderbolt accessory. I've never used the Thunderbolt port, so I'm not quite sure what it's for. And then you also do have power. It does 12 volts to 30 volts. So you could go as low as 12 volts and still have sufficient power, or you could go the whole way up to 30 volts with the standard DC plug. And you could just tap in there, whether it's like a portable jump start pack, like an inverter, like I think Stanley sells them at Walmart, or you could actually get the juice box that was marketed for this. Now, the downfall that I have seen on this is it takes a lot of power. And when I say a lot, I mean it takes a ton of power to film with this camera. The quality of it is very good. I will show you some clips now. Within these clips, this was filmed on the Blackmagic camera that I have in my hands now, the same exact one. A lot of those we had to run close to 600 feet of power cable. It was not a fun exercise to do, but the quality was definitely worth it. The other downfall within this camera compared to the pocket cinemas, obviously weight is a big one. This takes a lot of power, it weighs a ton, but the issue I'm talking about is the pattern noise. So there's a thing, FPN, fixed pattern noise. I think I've seen some people call it FNL or FLP or FPL. Basically, fixed pattern noise, FPN. It's what happens when it's the way the sensor is made. The way the sensor is manufactured is the pixels. So when you go up to the full ISO on this camera, which is only 800, with 800 ISO, you can see considerable noise and the lines within the sensor for those pixels. That is the one reason why I'm selling this camera, is it just does not do well in low light. If you throw a 1.2 f-stop, I know people go, oh, t-stop cinema. I can't afford a t-stop lens. Those are $1,200, whereas I pick one up for $300 and be happy with it. If you throw on a 1.2 f-stop at 800 ISO and you're in candlelight, it will be fine. You may notice some noise, but it will be fine. But if you're using, like, this lens is a Vivitar lens, this is a 28mm, and it goes down to 2.5. Anything above 1.8 f-stop on 800 ISO, you will see considerable noise. The native ISO on this camera is 400. The Pocket Cinema 4K has a dual native ISO that is 1600 and 3200, I believe. It's either, I know 3200 is the second native ISO. The first one's either 1600 or 1250. This camera does very well for daylight operations. You could make a movie strictly on this camera and be fine. Especially with the ProRes and Cinema DNG. The Cinema DNG is very good for DaVinci Resolve. So the way Cinema DNG works is it's a RAW format, so it allows for the most options when it comes to post-production. Within post-production on that, if you're shooting 24 frames per second, so that's 24, 24, 24, 24, 24 every single second. Each one of those frames, so you have 24 frames per second. Each second holds 24 frames, which means there's going to be 24 pictures per second of video. And then you're going to end up with, I believe it's a WAV file for the audio. This is able to do at full 4K Cinema DNG RAW about an hour and a half per 1 terabyte of video. So with this in mind, you should have a fair amount of storage if you're going to be doing anything that involves a lot of takes, interviews, videos like these, anything like that. The camera I'm filming this on now is my new camera. It's a Sony a6300. Some of you may be like, oh, that's a downgrade from this. Actually, it's not a downgrade. The Sony can go up to 51,200 ISO, which is fantastic. The lenses cost more, but the low light is better. It shoots full 4K, Super 35. That's one of the only cameras that does Super 35. And with this camera compared to that one, I am able to film with both and match both qualities of videos without issue. For example, I just finished filming a short. It was around a 20-minute short. It's a zombie flick. We filmed it entirely on this except that last day. And I used that Sony a6300 yesterday with this whole setup, and the Sony 6300 was able to be matched. So I'm going to show you on the left right now is going to be the Blackmagic camera, and on the right is going to be the Sony a6300. Exactly the same quality. So, do I feel as if we approach 2020, if I want to buy a 7 to 6 year old camera? Now, don't get me wrong, the Sony a6300 came out in 2016, and a lot of you may say, well, why would I want to go from a 2013, 2014 to a 2016? Well, it's about price, honestly, and it's about what you want to do. If you want to be fully professional, go out and buy yourself a Mini Ursa Pro that's close to $6,000 for like a minimum setup. If you're on a budget and you could go with this to a Sony or to any other Super 35 camera, I would personally go with the Sony because that way you can use it for low light. It's more portable. You don't have to jimmy rig a power supply or run 700 feet of Stinger. If you want to look more professional, have that full cinema feel, limited options, because the menu on this thing is not that big whatsoever, go with the Blackmagic. You will not be able to use this on most gimbals. Now, there are some gimbals you can, but you're going to be eating through batteries on that gimbal like no tomorrow. I still have issues. I have a Moza Air 2 that's sitting on the futon across from the camera right now, and this ate it up. The Sony, it worked. It's not balanced properly, but it's a trade-off. You can pick these cameras, these Blackmagic cameras, up for around $1,000 used, possibly as low as $700 without accessories. Maybe a power cable, that's about it. The Sony I picked up for $500. It was actually $490 plus tax. And that came with a 16 to 50 lens. If you want a wider option of lens, go with the Blackmagic. If you want that studio feel, if you want to use it for studio broadcast, go with the Blackmagic. If you want portability, go with the Sony or another mirrorless option. If you want to do handheld, go with a mirrorless option. If you're looking to be on a budget, go with a mirrorless option. I hope this video helps you as we enter, it's not the decade yet, the decade is the end of 2020 into 21. But as we approach 2020, please think wisely before you grab this camera or any of these older style cameras where your ISO can only go up to 800. Overall, it's a great camera, but there's a lot more options that you can go for less money. And this is my true, honest opinion. So, welcome to Guns Cameras America, GCA.